Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is CJ. Well, the reef tanks finally hit their 1 year mark. And for me, it's a huge accomplishment. So I just want to take a minute this vid, do a recap of the whole process and just kind of share my thoughts with everything I've learned. Hope you guys enjoy this one. So let's start at the beginning. Back around February last year is when I first ordered the JBJ 45 from Dr. Foster Smith. Luckily, it arrived in one piece, no problems there. And this was roughly, 3 months after I had just broken down my 37-gallon cube, my first reef tank that failed miserably. I had it for roughly 8 months. Great learning experience, but, it just didn't make it. So with that being said, I told myself, hey, I'm done with saltwater. It costs too much money, and I'm just done with it. And here you go. Obviously, I didn't make it too long, right? So just give you guys a quick look at what it looked like. Keep in mind, all of these clips are from videos in the playlist, so if you're interested in more details or to see videos of everything I'm showing you, go check out the JBJ playlist at the beginning. I got the unboxing set up all from scratch, so definitely check it out. So after buying the tank in February, I really had to take my time and, save enough money to buy all the equipment. Not to mention that I was buying my first house, and I knew I was getting ready to move, so no point in filling the tank with water, cycling it, only to break it down. So I really took this time to, play with my aquascape, play with my equipment, learn as much as I could, do some more researching, and that's pretty much what I did. So I recommend anyone new, aquascape your tank, look at it for a week. If you don't like it, change it. Do as many things as you can with it being empty, before you finally make a decision and stick with it. So after weeks of waiting and weeks of playing around with my scape, I was finally able to move into my house and get the tank set up. Now with cycling my system, I chose to do it the old school or the natural way. I ended up acclimating some freshwater mollies, around 5 or 6 of them, threw them in the tank. I didn't add any, fake bacteria or anything unnatural to the system. I just let it do it itself. Tank cycled in roughly 6 weeks, around a month, maybe a little more than a month, and I was ready to go. I tell you, there's no better feeling in the hobby than when your tank cycles and you can finally add your first fish. Now, of course, there's lessons to be learned along the way. First being, have a screen top if you don't have a top on your tank. I learned that the hard way. After a flame angel, a diamond spot goby, a 6-line wrasse, and then I forgot the other fish, but I had 4 fish jump out, turn into fish potato chips, and after that point, ended up adding a screen top later. Definitely learned my lesson from a few mistakes on my first system. The first being, when you add your first corals, dip them. The first tank I had, it was overrun with brown jelly. Wiped out all my euphyllias, hundreds and hundreds of dollars of corals just melting. There's no better way to dishearten yourself than to watch your corals just die. So in this system, I was really, really particular with that. I dipped everything in Revive, and I didn't take any exceptions to that. Now, the second thing I learned was not to use too much putty. Until you're sure of where you're going to put your corals, just place them there. Wedge them between rocks, whatever you got to do. And in worst case, just use a little super glue. That's pretty much what I did in this tank. And for that reason, if I move a coral, there's no, leftover putty behind, especially the white looking putty that stands out like a sore thumb. I really avoided that in this tank. Now you guys are going to notice I moved my corals a lot in these first few months, really just trying to find the perfect place for flow, lighting, and especially when I'm going to add corals later, just trying to leave room for them. So, this tank I really wanted to make sure I didn't have too many corals packed together, especially my euphyllias. I want to give them all room to grow, and that's kind of what I did. Now, I did take a few months, around 4 or 5, before I added my first anemone. Now, if you watch my channel, I had my fair share of luck with that. And this video is really going to show you just how much that thing moved from month to month, from the top left to the top right, and just all over the tank eventually, until I ended up splitting it in half by mistake and selling it out. So, a word to the wise, if you want an anemone in your system, don't plan on it being your showpiece, because it's going to do what it wants. And if you can't live with that, don't add it. Now, one of the second biggest mistakes I made on my first system that I'm not going to repeat on this one is changing my lighting. And I feel it's important to mention that because in this hobby, we always want to try new things, want to move things around. And when it comes to your lighting, don't mess with it. When you buy your tank, buy lights that are going to be strong enough to grow any and everything that you plan on keeping, and stick with them. Changing your lights halfway through a mature tank with your corals adjusted to it is just asking for trouble. And I'm not going to do it on this tank, and I don't recommend anyone do it on theirs. So just food for thought. If you're new to the hobby and you're doing shopping for lights, go big, because every coral you buy eventually is going to add up to more than any lights that you want. Go ahead and spend the money and get something that's going to grow what you want to keep. Now, I'll tell you, in this hobby, research is one thing, but experience is everything. Until you've actually lived through something, fixed it, and learned from it, you can never be in a position where you can show people or even try to teach anyone how to do something. It's one thing to read something and tell them, but it's another thing to say, I did it, and this is how to fix it. So with that being said, let's talk about the algae issues in my tank. First system I had, I did cure my rock for around 6 weeks. It's the same Marco's dry rock that I use in this tank. Had no hair algae issues. In this system, I didn't cure any rock, hair algae issues. So cause and effect, no doubt in my mind that, my maintenance, my lack of maintenance, and phosphates leaking from my rock directly contributed to the hair algae issues in my tank. But, it ended up burning itself out, which is a good thing. I'm happy about it, but a lesson learned. Honestly, if I can do it again, that's one of the major changes I would do to this tank. I would use different rock. The real Reef rock or the purple color rock. I really feel that I should have went with this system. I think that would have definitely added a different flavor to my tank. Of course, coralline are going to grow when it grows, but, I would have loved to have that purple rock to begin with. So the third and final lesson I can share with you guys is avoiding pests in your tank. In my first system, I had a ball of Cheeto I got from the LFS. Thought I had all kind of good life in it. Failing to realize that those little anemones that I seen inside the Cheeto was actually Aptasia. I didn't know about them at the time, but as you can imagine, it completely overran my first tank. It was really aggravating, and I promised myself I wouldn't go through it this time. So with that being said, I started with dry rock, and I stayed with dry rock. I didn't seed this tank with any kind of live rock from the LFS. I didn't introduce any Cheeto. I didn't add anything to my system that was bad. Between dipping my corals and expecting on my corals for any bristleworms or flatworms or Aptasia or anything that's bad for your tank, I was able to avoid it. So this tank is completely pest free. That's something I contribute to, just being really attentive to things I'm putting in my tank. I made tons of mistakes with that first system, and instead of talking all day about those mistakes in this video, if you guys are interested, check out the end of that Marineland 37-gallon cube series, my recap video, and I'll go into detail about everything that happened with that tank. But with this system, I brought all those experiences over, and I really feel like it's benefited me. There's levels to this hobby, and I'm far from the top. There's guys that's been doing this longer than I've been alive. I just wish that when I get older, I can look back and see this tank and think that, hey, I thought I was doing something, but I really wasn't doing nothing. I really feel like that anytime I look back at my older vids, at that time when I'm recording it, I'll be like, hey, my tank's looking pretty good. I only failing to realize it's going to get better. I just don't know it yet. So that's kind of how I feel about this tank. It looks good now, but I don't think it's reached its potential, and I don't think I've reached my potential in this hobby. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the walkthrough of my tank. I started this journey way back in February of 2015. Tank's been running all the way until May of 2016. So don't know what the future holds, but I will say, as much as I would like to try to upgrade, not realistic for me yet. With between the price and just me not being comfortable with going bigger yet. I really feel like there's so much for me to learn. I got the aquascaping and maybe putting corals in place down, but when it comes to the chemistry of the hobby, I feel like that's the next level, and I'm not there yet. I really want to learn how to really manipulate my tank parameters, control them, and then once I can do that, then I can think about going bigger. The worst thing I want to do is take a step bigger and have a bigger failure. So with that being said, do have some updates on the coming up for you guys. I have made some changes to the tank. I've replaced some bigger cores in the system, and I've added the Maxspect Gyre. So I know you guys have been wondering when I was going to get it. I have had it on the tank for a few days. I'm just going to let it run for a little while, then I'll get you guys an update. So other than that, hey, hope you guys enjoyed this one. As always, definitely like, comment, subscribe. You guys do what y'all do. Y'all be easy.